Named after the ancient African city in Egypt, Memphis, Tennessee would be the final battleground for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. This is Vernon Ash reporting. Considered by many to be a modern-day prophet, in his short life of 39 years, Dr. King touched the hearts of millions in America and around the world, and his legacy of nonviolent direct action continues even decades after his passing. Later, you'll hear actor Moses Peace in his portrayal of Dr. King as he gives an inspired speech of this writer's thinking on what the slain civil rights leader might say if alive today. But first, some thoughts about Dr. King from exclusive interviews with historical figures who remember the prophet and the times. These reflections in history feature the former Stokely Carmichael, now known as Kwame Ture, Minister Louis Farrakhan, Reverend James Netters, photographer Ernest Withers, and the Reverend Samuel Kiles. But Dr. King vowed to lead a second march in Memphis that was scheduled for Friday, April 5th. And as promised, he did return. On the night of April 3rd, at the Church of God in Christ headquarters, known as Mason Temple, he delivered what would be the finale of his speeches. On this dark, strange, and eerie night, many believe Dr. King even prophesied his own death. Reverend Kiles remembers.
There were storm warnings that night, and we thought that there would not be many people at the meeting.
Okay.
So he said, Ralph, why don't you go on and take that, and I'll stay here and plan with the guys. The guys had come in for the March on Washington planning. But when we got there, and when Ralph walked in, normally Marge is right behind him, and people started cheering, and the place was full. And Ralph said, well, this is not my crowd, this is Martin's crowd. He said, Billy, we need to go call him. And we had to go out in the lobby, there was no phone near, call the hotel and said, Martin, you better get over here because this is your crowd. And so he said, whatever you think. So they brought him, and we took up the offering and all that. And Ralph said, I ain't speaking to this crowd, this is your crowd, I can't handle this crowd. So Martin came over, and it was really ironic that Ralph introduced Martin for 45 minutes that night. And that was to be the last introduction he would make of him. And he went on and started when they were hooked up in Montgomery and how they had gone, and 40 minutes to 45 he introduced. So Martin, when he got up, when they finally said, and I present to you Martin King, Martin turned around and said to us, he said, and I thought Ralph wasn't going to speak. And that's, how he went on and did what is known now as the mountaintop speech. But he was so into that speech that he did a couple of things we had not seen him do before. He dwelt on the time that he was stabbed in New York, he said. He got, of all the letters he got one from a little girl somewhere who said, I read about what happened to you, Dr. King, and the doctor said if you had sneezed, it would have, burst the aorta and you would have bled to death. And he said, I'm glad I didn't sneeze. He said, because if I had sneezed, I would have missed the Selma to Montgomery March. I'm glad I didn't sneeze. I would have missed. He just kind of called the roll on things he would have missed. Mm-hmm. And then he started a quote and didn't finish, and that was very unusual for him. He said, mine eyes have seen the glory and the coming, and he just walked out. And usually that was unusual because he usually just stands around, talk, and shake hands with people. But he turned and walked immediately out of the building.
The tragedy of April 4th occurred at the Lorraine Motel, which in 1991 was transformed into the National Civil Rights Museum. Reverend Kiles retraces his steps on the day that shook Memphis, the nation, and the world as Dr. King was silenced by an assassin's bullet.
I spent the last 45 minutes of his life with him, he and Ralph Abernathy and myself. The dinner had come about, really, Jesse was on staff, and Jesse said, man, when are we going to get some food at your house? It's a part of our thing. When preachers get together, we go to somebody's house to eat. So the dinner really originated with Jesse. And then Martin tied into it, said, yeah, when are we going to your house to eat? So I set the time for dinner, 6 o'clock, April 4th, at my home. And I told them 5. That's how I happened to come to the Lorraine. They'd been in meetings all day with his staff from Atlanta. I was doing other things around town, preparing for the night meeting in the March. Well, he said, no, dinner is not 5, at 6, because I called your house. So anyway, we went in room 306, and I remember so much about that, because when people interview me like you're doing, and writers and stuff, they want to hear something mysterious. What kind of mood was he in? Was he somber? Was he prayerful? It's like 3 guys in the news media getting together with you. 3 preachers got together in this room, and we were just bantering with preachers talk. Ralph was looking for an evangelist to do his revival. And so Martin said, well, what about Kyle's? And I said, when is it, Ralph? Ralph said, well, it's in whatever time. I said, now I got to go to Fred Lofton. Fred Lofton, who's at Metropolitan Church, was in Columbus, Georgia. I said, I'm going to Fred that same week. So Martin said, now what kind of foolishness is this? Anybody with good sense would rather spend a week in Atlanta than Columbus, Georgia. Okay. I said, well, I committed. My word is out. And we talked about, Ralph had washed a shirt for Martin. And Martin put the shirt on, and he couldn't button it. So he said, man, I can't put this shirt. He said, you mean I took the time to wash that shirt and you're not going to put it on? He said, well, I can't button it. What am I going to do with it? And it was that kind of conversation all the way for the last 45 minutes. There was no discussion of it. Now, that night before, he had been somber in that speech that he almost didn't make, that came out to be the mountaintop speech. So we come to April 4th, and it's about 5 o'clock. We go in the room, and the kind of conversation we had. And writers, for the life of me, want me to say that something else happened that didn't happen. We were in a jovial mood. We were getting ready to go to dinner. They were teasing about, I hope your wife and the members in your church can cook. And I had just bought the house about a year earlier. He said, I know I heard you got a nice house, but I don't want you to be like my friend in Atlanta. One of my friends in Atlanta bought a house and didn't have no money to buy no food. So he invited me and my wife to dinner, and he had ham, and it was cold, and Kool-Aid, and it wasn't sweet. But that was the kind of conversation, because people don't want to see the humanity of King. If you don't see the humanity of King, that can excuse you. If you say, well, King is a saint, he's saintly, and he's otherworldly. That excuses us. He wasn't a saint. He hurt like we hurt. He loved it like we loved. He would love to have been at home with his children, but he was gone all the time. He was in demand, and he would like to have lived to see his children grown. But he didn't. He had no death wish. He felt that he would not because of the hatred that was in the world, but he didn't want to die. And he was very human. He was very human. He'd stop in the pool hall and shoot pool with the guys, and he always made it a point to say, if we're going to win this battle, there must be a coming together of all of us, every faction. He said, from the preacher to the pimp to the prostitute. It takes all of us to win this battle. So he related to people at that level. And so when writers and news people want me to say, well, in the room, what else happened? And they keep asking, what else? I said, well, this is what happened. We talked like 3 preachers talking, about life. And he wasn't somber or sad. And then when I said, okay, guys, we got to go. And we walked out on the balcony together. Jesse and Ben Branch were standing there. And he was leaning over the balcony. Somebody said, Doc, it's going to be cold. You better get your coat. He went back in and said, Ralph, get my coat. Ralph was still in the room putting on cologne. He said, it's going to probably be some nice-looking ladies over there, so I won't smell good. Martin said, well, give me some. He put some on him. Aramis cologne. And he came back out on the balcony and was talking to Jesse. He said, Ben, how you doing? And Jesse, how you doing? And he told Jesse specifically, he said, Jesse, we are going to Reverend's house for dinner, and you got a leather jacket on and a sweatshirt. Jesse said, well, I never knew that shirt and tie was a prerequisite for an appetite. I'm going to eat. That's what I'm going to do. And that's the kind of mood he was in. And I said, okay, guys, let's go. Let's get out of here. Let's go. And I turned to walk away. As I got one room down from 306, I heard this shot. I didn't realize it was a shot. I thought it was a car backfiring. Then I looked over the railing. Everybody was ducking. And when I looked back, I saw that, Dr. King was wounded, and the bullet had knocked him back. And I rushed to him. And here you have arguments about who got to him first. Was I there first, or was Ralph there first? I don't even get into that. I mean, what is that about? I remember taking a spread off of the bed, putting it over his body. And we know the autopsy said that the bullet severed his spinal cord, which means that he wouldn't have been able to speak or anything. Clinically, he was dead when he left. And Ralph says that Martin's told me so and so. And I'm sure he's talking about spiritually. He must have told him.
Ironically, only minutes prior to Dr. King's death, the Memphis City Council was making progress to settle the sanitation strike. Reverend Netters explains what appears to be one of the best-kept secrets surrounding the strike and Dr. King's murder.
The day Dr. King was shot and killed, we had secured 9 city councilmen, including the 3 black councilmen, and of course I was one of those. We were meeting on the 9th floor in what was the old Claridge Hotel at that time, because they've changed it since then to become condominiums, I believe. About 30 minutes before we received the news that he had been shot, we concluded our business there with a full resolution with 9 city councilmen, which was